This is Project WWWN, hosted by Isaac Davenport and Gary Hamrick Jr. Project WWWN is an exploration into the character development, world building, and game settings that go into developing the best possible creative superstars for current and future wrestling games.
And hello again, and welcome to our first live edition of Project WWWN with a Building Legends set up. And we are live here with the co-host that we are very much used to, Gary Hamrick. And bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, as we are trying to take this in a different direction and allow for things to be a little bit more available and open in the next couple of weeks. I am going to bring in the co-host, Mr. Hamrick, Gary Hamrick, live on stream. And today, allow me to introduce myself. I am Isaac Davenport, also known as Failed Hero, and in the world of the Worldwide Wrestling Network, I am also the voice of the Worldwide Wrestling Network as the play-by-play commentator, Remarkable Randall Reigns, and the gentleman that is in his extremely nice live streaming setup, Mr. Hamrick, Gary Hamrick, the secondary voice of the Worldwide Wrestling Network. Our official color commentator is Gary Hamrick Jr., Mr. Hamrick. And Mr. Hamrick, I believe that we are officially live with Project WWWN, the podcast.
We seem to be, and I believe what we're covering today is like take 47, isn't it?
We have gone through a couple of different takes for what we're going to do with this Building Legends segment.
Yes.
As a lot of people have pointed out, and honestly, people have messaged on Twitter, direct messaged and DM'd and other things. They've asked, hey, what are you going to do and bring back the podcast? And
we have been
we've
had
some
technical issues.
We've had some technical issues. We've had some editing issues, some timing issues, and unfortunately, like we say, health issues, mental health issues. But also a lot of things really just have come down to the really timing. And I got really focused on wanting to try to bring back our live content, which we did and were fairly effective at. We just finished out Krampus Night. We're going to link that below because we're going to be talking about some of that potentially later on. But we had a really great Krampus Night WWN show, and we were looking forward to book towards Succession, which was going to build over the next couple of months. And then, Gary, guess what happened?
Oh, I'm guessing you had the same data loss that I did.
Yes, I had a massive freaking data loss, and that was 55 characters that were works of both hours.
I was going to say, now, I had a question on that.
Yes.
Because we were saying 55 characters. Was that including my House Corvin characters?
Yes, it was including any characters
because I have most of those. I think I still have all of those.
Right, in some form.
On my console.
In some form.
In some form.
It's just
and in some cases, an updated version based on what you were using on stream.
Right. And so it's just that it's like the curse. We've talked about this before. As soon as we get the roster complete, we get the roster done, something stupid happens and causes...
Or even near done.
Yeah, something stupid happens, and it just throws everything into a ridiculous turmoil. Now, But in good news, as far as things that are going to be brought up into our attention, I was able to purchase a Series S with some extra money that I had saved, basically because my Christmas plans were ruined. So out of the absolute darkness of that, I was able to order and get the new Series S, and so that's going to help out with plans moving forward as games are being built, like the AEW game. I know that it's going to be on Xbox One as well, because they've just confirmed that, but this is going to give us an opportunity to be current and stay in the current
Here's
gen.
the thing. Here's the thing. I think if AEW was smart, they would, or AEW Games, THQ Nordic, I think is who is doing their publishing, that they would have just done for Series X, Series S, and
PlayStation 4
PlayStation
and 5.
No, PlayStation 5.
Okay.
And PC.
Okay.
Simply for now, I think at the point where we're at, I mean, we're 2 years into PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X,
and the life cycle of these series are gens are what, 5-6 years?
Well, sometimes longer than that, but the point that I'm getting at is more usually, pandemic aside, games will be current gen console only within a year of the new console coming out.
Yes.
It's been 2 years.
Yes.
It's been a little over 2 years. And I think we're at that point where certain games are going to benefit from just being on the current gen.
Right. I agree with that 100%.
I think AEW, if they really wanted to put a good showing out for their first game, would have done this.
Yes.
I think 2K is going to be foolish if they don't do it with 2K23.
Right. Because you and I both said that 2K22 is not perfect by any means. There's still problems with the game, like data corruption. But but it was a step in the right direction.
Oh yes,
we both said that.
Well, one of my biggest complaints about 2K22 is something that they started gradually improving in 2K18. They've not improved it since, and they badly need to improve it. And it's not anything that is directly related to console generation. It is simply the way certain things are presented in the game. In this case, tag teams, stables, and managers.
Right. We'll get into that a little bit later on.
2K22 took a step back with it.
I agree.
And I'm a little cranky with it.
But with that being said, and kind of giving folks a idea of what is happening and whatnot, let's get on the task at hand, which is our subject. And give me just a second, because like I said, ladies and gentlemen, bear with us as we were trying to do this live. We also want to be able to take this video and audio together, and we want to be able to place it onto Spotify as well, for those who want to be able to listen to this on the go. So we want to keep a lot of the things that we had, like our bumpers and our intros and other things, in as well. So let's do a quick little introduction to what we are going to be discussing today.
Building Legends is Project WWWN's trademark interview segment featuring guests from the wrestling game creative community. Building Legends dives deep into the character's influences, look, gimmick, movesets, attributes, and personality traits to discuss how all of those ideas work together to create a fully realized and original character.
And thank you, Jameson Jensen, once again for your very, very nice voiceover work. He is moving into becoming a full voiceover artist, and we are going to tag him down in the bottom into YouTube for to give him credit for his work.
And one of these days, one of these days, we're gonna drag him onto the podcast to be interviewed.
Yes, I'd love to do that. Now, anyway, so our
probably
subject,
kicking and streaming.
Our subject today is we're going back to building legends, and we're going to be focusing on one of your original characters. We do these interviews where we want people to get to know the builds and the ideas behind the characters that we are using to help elevate talent in the Worldwide Wrestling Network. And so let me read this little 2-paragraph introduction that you submitted, because everybody has to follow the rules. Guys, once again, if you want to be on the podcast with us, if you want to discuss your call creation, you can hit us up in our link tree that's below. That is willow.w.lo/project WWWN, and you can introduce yourself to us. Send us some information about your call. Answer the 10 questions that we're going to go through with this character today, and we'll go through it, and we'll have you live on the podcast and on Spotify as well. But anyway, here is the introduction of the character according to the creator himself, Mr. Hammer. Chloe Corvin is the first cousin of Gaz Corvin, a fact that has only been recently confirmed, despite it never really being a secret. Prior to making something of a home base in the Worldwide Wrestling Network, Chloe traveled the world making a name for herself as both an eccentric daredevil who has a proficiency for both her high-flying and technical skills. It makes sense that since much of her wrestling and training came from the lucha libre style of Mexico and the Joshi influence of Japan, much of her in-ring skills, though, are often overlooked due to her eccentric and often erratic behavior. Chloe is best known for misfit doll persona and often plays up on her theatrical interest. She has left some to wonder just how mentally stable she is, and some have come to argue that she might be better than her cousin Gaz Corvin when it comes to playing mind games. Behind her loving of the theatrical and mind games, though, there is a performer who is quite capable in the ring. The most dangerous thing about Chloe might be that her craziness and willingness to take risk is more planned chaos than people realize. So, as you alluded to, we have recorded and re-recorded and lost parts and added parts to this for a while now. And
throughout the entire thing, the most dangerous part of it is the amount of typos I have in that first paragraph.
That is true. But anyway, essentially, Chloe from the perspective of the Worldwide Wrestling Network, is our she's our daredevil. She is
specifically she is our female
daredevil. And she is, and I mean this in the truest sense of that word, that she is going and willing to put herself on the line to achieve her goals. Her goals may not include victory, okay? But she's willing to put everything on the line in order to achieve her goals. And so, with that being said, let's talk about the origin of this character. Let's talk about. So,
All right.
when we previously talked about Gaz Corvin and his introduction on Project WWWN, you
Yes.
started it and said that it was around 1998, 1999
99.
with WWE Warzone and Attitude that you started working on characters. Was
Yes.
Chloe a part of those initial builds?
Um. Yes and no. My out aside from the you know self-insert character that eventually became Gaz Corvin, most of the characters that I created were based on people that were in my dorm building. Um, and there were a few that were outside of that. One of them evolved accidentally into another character that we have on the WWWN roster.
Right.
Um, and Chloe didn't really come around until shortly after that. Um, oddly enough, Chloe began not from that game, but from other stuff going on that was wrestling related happening around that same time period.
Okay, well, we'll get into that in just a minute. So,
Yeah.
to build on kind of how we approach building in-game characters, when you are building Chloe, we have a list of um, wrestling styles that we build from. What do you? We always try to build 3 styles at least. Well, at maximum. So,
I
what
mean,
are those 3 styles?
definitely
But what are those 3
luchador,
styles that Chloe wrestles in?
luchador, high flyer, and technical.
Okay, and
Um,
how would you say that those 3 styles blend together to make Chloe a unique opponent?
well, so here's the thing: when I was conceiving the idea for the move set in my mind, and I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. When I was conceiving the move set, I really wanted to focus on this idea of um, she's somebody who primarily trained or whose primary interest in the wrestling business came from what she saw of lucha libre in Mexico, male
Okay,
or female, and then what she saw of um, what would have technically been late '90s Joshi or Perosu.
right.
Um, eh, I some of that I've had to kind of
Jump down into the
retcon a little
research
bit.
wormhole, right?
Well, research wormhole, but kind of retcon because um, I I I consider her of a certain tier character in the lore of the Corvin family,
Right.
in the lore of House Corvin, and so I had to go back to a few certain talent that I knew from from the late '90s, early 2000s, and then dive into talent who I'm not as familiar with.
Right. Right.
Um,
Now,
and for most of her moveset, it was wound up being people that I wasn't as familiar with
right. Right.
initially.
So
Um,
we'll get to the moveset in just a minute. So
yes,
this is the part that you have a couple of personal stories that are connected
yes,
to with uh,
at least 2 or 3.
yeah, and that connect with the creation of this character. So when I ask about influences,
Hmm.
especially with this, especially with like the way that we structure the Worldwide Wrestling Network, I'm trying to figure out people's characters' personalities. Okay, where do they plug into the casting of the show? And so, but when I ask you to name 5 influences, okay, you wind up with some fairly off the wall and often very personal things that do
and some
make
things
sense.
I have,
That do make
and
sense.
some things that that do make sense, and some of it I have to curtail for personal reasons. You know, I there are some things I can't repeat out of respect for certain parties.
Right. So
But
so here's what you wrote, and then we can kind of break down and dissect
Okay.
it. Okay. So your first influence is a couple of old friends and acquaintances. Okay.
Yeah.
Your second influence is retired professional wrestler Daisy Hayes.
yes,
Your next influence is the story that you told where we originally were designing and bringing Chloe into the Worldwide Wrestling Network, which was
Yeah.
the girl who was basically dressed up as a living doll, okay, in a
Yes.
horror house, okay.
yes,
And then some of the other influences that are more recent are Fairuza Balk and Helena Bonham Carter, specifically with the types of roles that they have
Yeah.
taken on throughout their career. We also kind of threw in Sally from A Nightmare Before Christmas, mostly because of that
Sally though
doll
is an
gimmick.
attire.
Yeah. And then
Sally's influence really came about because of attire
Right.
stuff. we were
And then
doing.
finally, it's she's become a little more influenced from performers that are in that weird nebulous zone of being both an influencer and a artist, and there
Yes.
is a strange crossover with folks like Grimes and Poppy. Okay.
Right,
So-
and the version of what I wrote there, I thought of a better way to put it than
Right.
that, and it is the artist influencer like Poppy or Grimes.
Right.
That type
Which is
of,
why I
mean,
brought that
Yeah.
article in,
It-
because
it
we
is
discussed that.
Yeah, it's something that I don't want to pigeonhole Poppy,
Right.
but Poppy was my introduction into that genre.
Right.
Or at least about 50% of my introduction into that genre.
Right. So let's
And-
take this piece by piece. And so
Okay.
let's start with how did these old friends or acquaintances or these personal connections
Right.
influence Chloe as a character?
So I mentioned the other stuff going on wrestling wise in around 98, 99. I'm gonna probably break kayfabe here for somebody. AJ Styles started out in a promotion called NCW, which quickly became NWA Wildside.
And then became Anarchy
round-
Wrestling.
Well, yeah, but we're not even. Well, but it was NWA Anarchy, then it was in Anarchy Wrestling, and now it's back to NCW.
Right, and they still
full circle.
they're
It's full
full circle,
And
and
They
so,
still
and,
promote, and they still promote in that same building today.
right. They're still
I
doing
found that out.
training
Yes,
in that same
and
building,
in that same building.
but with
thank
new
God it ain't-
leadership and
thank-
new trainers.
Yes, thank God. But
And also for people, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but also for people
Yeah.
who, just to give them some idea about how deep and strange that locker
Yes.
room and roster was. Those of you who watch AEW, if you have seen Slim J and been fascinated by this guy who is clearly
Slim
talented.
J's a close friend of mine.
Yeah, but people are asking the question of where the hell did Slim J came from? Slim J came from this era of
NWA.
the
He came from NWA Wildside.
Yeah, he came from NWA
He was
Wildside,
one of the first batch of trainees out of NWA Wildside.
And that era of the late 90s, early 2000s independent wrestling scene.
Yes.
Okay.
And so around that same time, I had a couple of friends who were training, or trying to train, around the same time that Slim J was. And one of them is a gentleman by the name of Azrael, who is now running the training school up there, and is one of Slim's best buds, IRL. And the other one is a gentleman who I shall not say his name other than he was nicknamed Hacksaw.
Yeah, we're just gonna call him Hacksaw, and unfortunately it's a rib on.
It's a rib
on his level of intelligence, especially with the way that Hacksaw Jim Duggan portrayed himself on television. The rib
it was a rib on Hacksaw Jim Duggan's gimmick. He had no idea, by the way.
Right, and
so
give us
at the time he was training up there, I had expressed interest in doing some film work, how they film the vignettes, and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, how are they shooting promos? How are they shooting things that are not done in ring?
Right. And I was interested in shooting the in-ring stuff too, but and a couple of other people that were friends with Hacksaw and I. One of them was this young lady named Crystal. Her sister Tabitha, and this other young lady named Nikki. Tabitha and Nikki wanted to do in-ring. Crystal wanted to just be a valet. And Crystal came up with this character idea based on an idea that Hacksaw and I talked about that eventually became Chloe Corvin.
Right.
She was basically this crazy club girl street urchin, grunge rock street urchin, depending on the day and what mood we were in.
Right.
But it was always coming back to the street urchin attire. The grunge rock fashion attire, which that was kind of what we all wore back then.
Right. Seattle effectively took over the United States.
Practically. Pretty much. Damn you, Eddie Vedder, and happy birthday. But or happy belated birthday. But we had this idea, and Tabitha and Nikki had this vague idea, specifically Nikki, that later became the character Vendetta, or became the template for the character Vendetta. And Crystal had this idea for Chloe. We were originally going to call her Crystal after, because her name was Crystal, but the problem was that there was another young lady who was training there named Crystal Rose, who has done some stuff for the NWA promotion that Billy Corrigan's running.
And I think she did one or two matches with AEW on Dark.
I think I have not kept up with a lot of the as much of the AEW Dark as I'd like. I think she's done one match or two matches for them. I don't remember. But and I'm friends with Crystal. We know each other. But because of this, we needed another name for this character that Crystal wanted to do. and that Hacksaw would had to have her do. And the whole purpose was, she was going to be the valet hanger on that got him over, because he wasn't going to get over by himself.
Right.
We both, I mean, she knew it. I knew it. I don't think he knew it.
Right.
He got kicked out of the training school.
Didn't make
And
it. Was a washout.
She didn't even bother showing up because we realized he was getting kicked out. So she didn't even bother showing up. But I had all of the notes. I had taken notes on everything we had talked about. And so a couple of years later, I say a couple, this was several years later. And you'll have to help me remember what year, Isaac. But when did they start doing the heavy creation suite on the WWE games?
As far as
I'm thinking like 2007.
Probably
like SmackDown versus Raw 2007, maybe.
It might have been SmackDown versus Raw 2 had some of the things that would become. It was SmackDown 3 and Here Comes the Pain.
Well, this was after this. Well, it might have been around Here Comes the Pain, but it was shortly after. I started doing characters based on people. I started doing the characters based on me, my buddy Crabtree, a couple other people, and I created this female manager character that was based on the idea that Crystal had, and I didn't have a character name for it. And I didn't want to have her look like Crystal. I mean, we didn't have the face texture thing that back then anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I'll get to part of that in a second. But I wanted to do the grunge rock, short female grunge rock clothing. Maybe some like a nose ring and a lip piercing if it was available. Some random tattoo, whatever. And I needed a name for her. And do you remember the movie Singles?
Vaguely, yes.
Vaguely. There's a song on the soundtrack called Chloe Crown of Thorns.
Okay.
Or no, it's called Chloe Dancer / Crown of Thorns. And so I chose the name Chloe from that.
Okay.
I love that soundtrack. It is one of the best 90s movie soundtracks, along with the Craft soundtrack, in my opinion. It may not be the best, but it is up there in the top 10 easily. And so that's how the character got the name Chloe. And so when I started thinking about the visual, instead of my mind going to Crystal, my mind went to another close friend of mine named Hope.
Okay.
Because I don't even remember. I know it might have been because I found a group photo that me, her, Cindy, and I can't think of the other. David Gravett was in there with us, and I can't think of who the other two people were. We did a group photo my senior year of high school, and she was in that photo, and I think I had stumbled across the photo, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna do the bobbed hair and grunge rock," and she did the grunge rock clothes thing harder than I did. She did the grunge clothing harder than I did. Cindy was a metalhead, but I mean, Hope was a diehard Nirvana fan. Okay,
right. And now is so Hope the one that had the drastic change of hairstyle?
No. I'm getting to her.
Okay.
And that said, that was where the initial ideas of her came about. And then when I started doing stuff for for you. That I was gonna um, send you this character over. I wanted to have a backstory in my mind,
Right.
and I started up this idea, and my mind went to I don't know if she'll want to be mentioned here, but sorry,
Well,
Katie.
but
Uh,
like you said, change the names
well,
to protect
I'm
the
not.
innocent.
No, I'm going to just mention Katie. I'm not going to mention Katie's last name. How about that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Um, but Katie is uh, well, I may give it away when I say this. She's a politician's daughter. She's a musician, um, heavily involved in musical theater for a number of years, and I've known her since my freshman year of college, her senior year of high school. I graduated the year before she did. Um, and so one evening, she comes into where I was working with her sister, and I didn't even recognize her. She had this, like, I think it was supposed to be an attempt at a pixie cut, but it was damn near shaved looking. Um, it I mean, it was just this really short pixie cut, and it was so incredibly drastic.
And
Especially even
striking
if you,
because
I
it
mean,
was obviously a statement.
well, it was a statement. It made her look like a completely different person. I mean, I was used to seeing her with this long blonde hair that went down to her, down around maybe her shoulders, maybe a little bit lower. It goes down a little bit low below her shoulders now. Um, and they came in and ordered something, and they were chatting with me like they knew me. Or she was particularly, I had not met her sister before. I knew her, and she said, she just was like, "You don't recognize me, do you?" I'm like, uh, and she told me who she was, and I said, "Shit, I did not recognize you with the short hair." And so that has been stuck in my mind ever since.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I'm assuming she did it for a theater part, or just did it because of some sort of post-teenage rebellion. Because we weren't teens by that point.
Right.
Or well, she might have been 19. I was 20 at that point, I know. At least. But like I said, she's about a year and a half younger than me. And I started doing backstory, and she had influenced an idea for a character in a script that I wrote for a writing project in film school.
Right.
Let's call it film school. And I decided to adapt her influence on that project, that character, to Chloe Corvin's backstory.
Okay.
And I still to this day, I think about, like, I mean, I've seen her musical theater one-woman show that she was doing. I've seen her do this live, and I remember her transformation on that, and I'm just like, this is the kind of shit Chloe would do.
Right.
That there's both a direct and an indirect influence on the character.
Right.
So
from the theatrical approach to
yes.
drastic types of shifts in
yes.
like appearance and motivation. Now
Yes.
bringing this kind of into the more way that I like having the question answered, as far as influences.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about Daisy Hayes.
Okay. Well, we could do a whole podcast episode
But
or at least
what
a
in
half a podcast
particular
episode, me
is
gushing
the
about Daisy Hayes.
influence about Daisy
So
with Chloe?
my knowledge of Daisy was positioned at NWA Wildside. She did at least a dozen dates for them over the course of a year and a half. She traveled with Matt Sydal and Delirious, and frequently, if she wasn't working a mixed gender match or intergender match, one or the other. I mean, she was managing Matt and Delirious,
Right.
and there was always this spot she would do in the match where she would make sure she got in. They had a spot for her to get involved and do something on the other team. Just to remind people that even though she's out here as our manager tonight, she's a damn worker in the ring.
Yes.
And that was my launch point for Chloe Corvin in the wrestling business.
Right.
That she would have started had, my thinking was that her first few weeks of training were to be a manager, and she wasn't really sure she was going to do it. She was kind of just there because her cousin and her cousin-in-law were asking her to help out, and then she discovers Mexico, and rest is history.
Right.
But for that period, she was more of a manager valet.
Right.
And my point of reference became Daisy.
Right. As far as like build and
moveset. She was I know we're going to talk about moveset influences later. Daisy was initially the only American female on the list.
Right. Right.
She was initially the only American female on the list. We
now,
have since added one more.
Now, and so Daisy really comes down as far as influence is basically body type, the size. So let's kind of put two of these together: this horror house doll girl and Sally, the rag doll. What is dynamic about that doll or misfit doll or haunted doll in
primarily
imagery?
the look.
Okay.
The look. Because if it had been left up to me, and you and I have butted heads about this over the years, where I'm perfectly willing to let some of my older characters wrestle in street clothes because it's what they started out in, and I've gotten better about it, but I'm still I liked John Moxley's attire as Dean Ambrose just fine. Okay, but okay, we've got to come up with some attire for Chloe Corvin, some actual wrestling attire. So I started thinking about this girl that was in this horror house that I didn't even realize was a real girl at first.
Now, so for some context, you were there getting some B-roll for news.
I was there. Yes, I was there as part of a project at my this film school program that I was in. I was shooting the B-roll for this newsreel, and we get into this one spot it was a Christian horror house. Okay, so we get into the room where the devil is, where Satan is there taunting the people passing by, and the guy that was shooting the main portion, he was, I think, focused on like getting Satan in the shot.
Right.
I was getting what was behind the. Well, I mean, I don't remember. I mean, I think the good shot we got of him was off of what the other guy shot. But I was getting the stuff behind him,
Right.
like the set pieces. I was looking at the set pieces. So I zoom in on the back of the room where it looks like there are these dolls, these mannequins, and dolls sitting in the back of the area. And I focus on what appears to be this mannequin doll. I couldn't tell what it was. And I zoomed in on it. And all of a sudden, she scares the shit out of me by blinking. I mean, I'm sitting there just zoomed in on her face, just trying to figure out, and she blinks. Perfect shot. And that was the shot that wound up on the reel.
And because
where
of
I
that,
was steady on her.
right.
And I thought about the theater, and I just was like, I've got to do this misfit doll gimmick.
Right.
This whole, creepy doll thing. And when I brought it up to you, and we started spitballing and springboarding on stuff, you brought up Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas, which I was a little bit horrified by the idea of at first, but it grew on me.
Right.
So, because I was gonna go off in another direction, and we have two what I would refer to as signature attires for Chloe. One of them is the misfit doll attire that is influenced by the makeup that the girl had on at the horror house and Sally's patchwork stuff. The other one is Columbia from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right.
And if I was gonna say there was anything third, I would want to probably try to invoke. There was one thing I wanted to avoid invoking, but I love the actress and her work, and it's on the list here. Fairuza Balk.
Right.
Because I figure the minute I bring up anything related to Fairuza, people are gonna be like, "Oh, The Craft."
Right.
I'm gonna be like, "No, Waterboy."
Yeah, Vicky Valancourt.
Vicky Valancourt from The Waterboy. That was the only Adam Sandler movie that I legitimately enjoyed, and it was solely because of her.
Right.
I mean, that was why I enjoyed that movie. And I don't know if I could say that I would have enjoyed that movie without her in it. So, but I like a lot of the stuff I've seen Fairuza in.
Right.
And I love the kind of role choices that she made or makes.
Right.
Because she's not as active in film as
after a bit of an absence, she's made a bit of a resurgence.
She's done a few things.
Mostly independent stuff, and that's good for her.
She's doing other artistic ventures now.
Right.
She's got a music EP out available on Spotify, like our podcast. She does a lot of artistic prints that she has for sale via her website. I think it's for sale via her website. I know she's been doing some other art stuff that she talks about on her website and blog and stuff. But
so let's bring it to the modern influences of Helena Bonham Carter and the influencer / artist deal.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with Helena's really not a modern influence. Okay, look at the amount of. I mean, she's been around since the 80s. She's had more of a varied career than Fairuza has. And there's a couple of specific roles that she's had that I'm like, okay, I immediately think of her doing Bellatrix Lestrange from the Potter films. Has, if we could get Chloe doing that wild kind of shit,
Right.
I would be all for it.
Right.
But she has. I mean, she's very adept at those kind of outlandish, bombastic, theatrical things, and it does go back to the theater element
Right.
that I keep coming back to with Chloe.
And then also bringing it full circle, it does not just the theater element, but this modern take that you're trying to do with this influencer artist that has to be on all the time. That they can't that separating the art from the artist almost doesn't exist until they're completely behind closed doors.
Yeah. And I mean, if it does exist, it's in very small amounts.
Right.
It's very tempered amounts. I mean, I know we've seen Poppy not be Poppy before, but it's been in such brief spurts.
Right.
That it's really a blur if she's being the character, being the public persona that she has, or if she's being that public, her real self.
Right.
And I have to think that the burden a lot of these artist influencers, I don't care what genre of social media influencer they are, that they have that there is a air of performance about them.
Right.
And that was something that I think if I were 20 years younger, I mean, I just turned 47. Okay, if I was 25 years younger than I am, if I was in my early 20s and making this character, I would probably be reaching immediately for, oh, she's a social media influencer.
Right.
And of whatever kind. And I could almost see that with Chloe.
Right.
It would, if
because that would blend with the theatricality and blend with the story that she tells herself and the changing of persona, like changing your shirt.
Exactly.
And I see that fit very much directly with the character and how you have built her over time.
I mean, I wanted to do a clown. I wanted to do a clown costume for her. It started out as being kind of a. I found that I'm on Instagram. I'm supposed to be running our Instagram account, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. But I was searching on Instagram, like just how you do the random browse thing, and I found this Twitch streamer who does a lot of clown stuff. And I don't think she streams anymore, but I caught like 2 of her last streams. And one of her clown photos that she posted, I said, we could do that in game for Chloe.
Right. And that's what we're seeing with the image that we have. It was the black with the checkerboard
version. And then 2K went and did a patch on the game that fucked the costume up.
Yeah, removed a couple of things that were kind of essential.
And Yeah. They removed the top. Period. And when I went to remake the tights, I couldn't get it to line up anything to line up properly on it like I had before. So, um, but we had this, and that's actually not the final version that we have in that picture. The final version, I had a green wig on her to match the green wig that the young lady had in the photo.
Right.
But I mean, it was kind of just meant to be, this particular young lady, she is a pro wrestling fan. She played 2K20. Did not even. That was her first time playing a 2K game. Had no idea how bad it was.
God bless her.
I know, right? And she's not been doing much gaming recently. But she still has a heavy interest in professional wrestling. She has indicated, but has not followed up on wanting to become a professional wrestler. So, but you know, I think she could do it if I think she would understand the entertainment aspect. I know for a fact.
Well,
but
with that,
and I think she could do the athletic.
With that, I think that really
that's pretty much. I mean,
I think that wraps up the background and kind of the history. Let's take a moment and we will go into and play just a little bit of Chloe's theme music, and we will be right back.
All right.
Committed by One-Eyed Doll. And ladies and gentlemen, just bringing a little bit of background to the real world for one moment. Hello there, wrestling fans. This is Remarkable Randall Reigns here, inviting you to join me on Project WWWN, the official podcast of the Worldwide Wrestling Network. So much for the frickin' segue.
What? We're gonna have to edit this. I was looking at the script and you didn't do what was on the script.
I did.
At least what I'm seeing on this script.
Did you scroll down to the bottom?
Yes. Unless I didn't scroll down to the right place. Oh. I was looking at the place above it. Fuck.
All right. So.
Okay.
So.
Want to try that again?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Anchor. Hello there, wrestling fans. It is Remarkable Randall Reigns here, inviting you to join me on Project WWWN, the official podcast of the Worldwide Wrestling Network.
That's right, Randall. And I'm happy to announce we're using Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast for all of our episodes.
That's right, Mr. Hamrick. With Anchor, we have everything we need to create and distribute our podcast all in one place. It's super easy to use, and the best part of it is that it is 100% free.
Plus, with Anchor's built in recording and editing tools, we can create high quality episodes from anywhere, whether we're at home or on the go.
And when we're ready to share our experiences with the world, Anchor makes it incredibly easy to distribute our podcast on popular platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
And sharing our podcast episodes as well. So, if you're a wrestling fan looking to get all the latest insights and behind the scenes action from the Worldwide Wrestling Network, be sure to tune in to Project WWWN, powered by Anchor.
And if you're interested in starting your own podcast, give Anchor a try. It's the easiest way to get started. And ladies and gentlemen, if Isaac Davenport can figure it out, well, certainly you can figure it out. Then get started and share your voice with the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So join us on Project WWWN and discover the power of Anchor for yourself. We'll see you in the squared circle.
And what's that? Stay safe and what?
Stay over.
So, once again, that is One-Eyed Doll playing us in with Chloe's theme committed that we are using for Chloe Corvin for the Worldwide Wrestling Network. And we are going to roll back right into the interview, and we are on the back end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. And this is where we're going to start talking about the ins and outs of character creation. So, we're going to skip down to question number 6 because we know that Chloe is not like your character. That question is usually for folks. That's usually for folks who are basing their character on themselves, and we create more characters. We create characters that are definitely not self-inserts. So, number 6, knowing that your moveset is a 100% unique thing. We like to talk about the inspirations of how, quote unquote, our character is supposed to work. So, what wrestlers inspired Chloe's moveset?
Well, I mentioned Daisy Hayes.
Right.
When I was initially coming up, because you were telling me to choose 5. My initial thought was I'm going to choose 5 females who predominantly worked in Mexico or Japan.
Right.
And we wound up being males and females who primarily, and we had, it just so happened that I don't think any of the people on that initial list happened to be from the U.S., happened to be American. Taya Valkyrie is originally from Canada.
And spent most of her career in Mexico.
Yeah, predominantly has worked in Mexico, other than her brief TNA or Impact Wrestling stint.
And as Frankie Monet in NXT.
I was gonna say and she apparently lent her moveset to Frankie Monet in NXT briefly. um, that had so much promise, but
It
anyway.
did. It did.
I wanted to see WWE call her up to the main roster, put her with her husband, call the duo Frankie and Johnny, and get sued by Tom Waits. But
Yeah, so after Taya,
so after Taya, the two males on the list, one of them I knew, the other one I didn't.
right.
And the one that I knew, I would have never thought to put him on the list, and that was Jack Evans. I didn't even realize until you brought him up that Jack was still working.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of those.
Which is cold as ice, man. That is just frigid on your part.
No, it is, but it's not intentional. I have enough trouble keeping up with if certain friends of mine are still working in the business. I'm not even. I can't go with keeping up with friends of friends as well.
Right.
Okay.
But we picked Jack because Jack had that.
We did.
Kick-based offense, and when Jack was younger, he was a freaking maniac. Just a daredevil, directly influenced to see. Basically, he was a look what I can do, the professional wrestler.
Yes, and honestly, it's really bad on me for not thinking of him, because how you just phrased that is, I think, a very accurate description of Chloe if we could get her to work the way we would love her to work.
Right.
And of course, you added Aerostar on there, who I'm not familiar with.
And the reason I added Aerostar was based around your description of wanting to pull from this Daredevil-esque thing.
Yes.
And I have watched a lot of Lucha Underground and also seen Aerostar's work in other promotions in Mexico. And this was a guy who embodied the Daredevil meets Lucha Libre, my body is a weapon type deal.
Yes, and like I said, he's not someone I was familiar with, and then that covered a lot of the Daredevil and Lucha Libre influence. And so for the Joshi, I wanted to go with everybody's favorite Joshi moonsault performer, Io Shirai. And if she's not your favorite,
Io Sky.
You're wrong.
Io Sky. I'm sorry, I've got a K caught in my throat. Io Sky. Io Sky.
Exactly. You got K caught in your throat. Jeez. You got something else caught in your throat. But anyway, but Io Shirai, Evo Sky, whatever, Io Sky, whatever you want to call her. I definitely wanted to use her, especially when they put her stuff in formally with 2K20.
Right.
I mean, I'm just like, I wanted to put the gear on Chloe, for like the kick pad boot combo that she has. I use on Chloe and the character usually.
Right.
Unless we find something else eventually, but I mean, then the other one was B Priestley, because I mean, B is predominantly known in two places, England and Japan.
Right.
Now, I know she's worked one match in NXT as Blair Davenport. We don't know if she's come over to the main NXT roster or the main roster as Blair Davenport after they shut NXT UK down. So, we don't know if she's done with them or not, but I thought B would be a good point of reference for Chloe working in Japan,
Right.
minus the Daredevil stuff. You know,
Right.
Chloe's B is known as the female villain Gaijin
Right.
in Japan, and that was, I mean,
That was one of the roles that you saw
that
Chloe
was, yeah,
in
that was
in her
that
early
was
days.
yeah, well, and not so much her earliest days, her early days in Japan.
Right. That's what. Yeah.
Because, yeah, and so I was just like, I don't, I don't think it's too far a stretch to say that B fits with Taya. B is a good connecting piece between Taya and Io. And there's another young lady whose work we are still acquainting ourselves with, and that is Lady Frost. Lady Frost is quickly becoming an influence on both Chloe and another character that I'm developing, and just from her moveset. And she's an American-based wrestler who has a lot of high flyer gymnastic background type moves, and
really has figured out a way to make that skill set work to
yes.
her advantage in professional wrestling.
Well, and not just that, but work to her advantage, but work in a unique way.
Right, because she is she's not what you would think as a traditional gymnast build. She's not built like Casey Catanzaro. She is
she's got a good 4 or 5, maybe 6 inches on Casey.
Right.
Casey's only like 5 foot at best.
Right.
I think she's like 4'11 and a half.
But when most people think female gymnast, they are thinking
they're thinking
smaller,
the shorter Olympic gymnast. They're not thinking like collegiate gymnast or an older, I say older, a female gymnast who's fully grown and not in her fucking teens.
Right.
And
so Frost really has adapted her skill set, and we are. I was frustrated when we were trying to pull influences for her and her moveset because I knew she was wrestling matches, but nobody was doing. We were getting highlight reels and clips, but nobody was doing top moves. Nobody was editing wikis.
To her or her husband.
Folks weren't paying attention, and it was so frustrating because, like, the first time that I saw her do a corkscrew moonsault, I was like,
which is Chloe's finisher.
Yeah,
by the way.
I was like, and we had decided that was Chloe's finisher before.
Yes.
The minute that I saw Lady Frost do that corkscrew moonsault, I was like, gimmick infringement. Gimmick infringement.
Well, no, see, I won't say that. I won't say that because there is nothing about Lady Frost's actual gimmick.
No, and I'm saying it in complete jest.
Okay.
But it's like the thing is, my first reaction was, holy crap, that is the type of grace that Chloe would have in pulling off her signature move. Like everything else that Chloe kind of does might look a little haphazard, but when she's going up to the top to go for the time warp, then that's really her showing off. Check this out. Now, bringing this out full circle, let's talk about the 5 maneuvers, the signature maneuvers of Chloe Corvin.
Okay. Well, we were just talking about the corkscrew moonsault. And I think it's in the game as corkscrew diving moonsault.
Yeah,
but,
diving
I
corkscrew
mean,
moonsault. Yeah.
yeah, diving corkscrew moonsault, corkscrew diving moonsault, whatever, 2K, whatever. But I decided on calling it the Time Warp in reference to Rocky Horror Picture Show, Columbia, because we were doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show was one of her, principal best known attires,
Right.
Blah blah blah, and I just was like, you know what? Let's call the move the Time Warp. And then the Rolling Unprettier, I'll be honest.
That's one that we've changed.
We have changed it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what we changed it to.
We changed it to the Dragon Cutter.
Okay. And we haven't named the Dragon Cutter.
Well, we were thought that we were still going to keep it as the moral or the moral compass. We were just changing out that Rolling Unprettier.
Yeah, I mean, I still, it's something we can, it's, the idea is still a work in progress. I thought we were leaving we'll talk about this later. But we were originally doing a Rolling Unprettier that we were calling the moral/immoral compass, depending on if she was a face or a heel.
Right.
Part of that was I just like the move, the Unprettier, or whatever. It's been called a few other things. Yeah, Kill Switch, Unprettier. At one point, it was called the Impaler.
Right.
Okay. And I mean, whatever you want to call that move. And then we saw you introduced me to the version that Leo Rush does, the rolling version of that move.
Right.
And I thought it fit. It fit for Chloe having it as a finisher.
Yes.
And it's something that I think we could throw it back on there as a finish for her if we had to.
Right.
The Dragon Cutter, I don't want to call that. I don't want to take the move, the compass move, and put it on the Dragon Cutter. But we just have put the Dragon Cutter on there as a finish within the past, since 2K22 come out.
Right.
Because when I sent Chloe off to SVW, I had the Rolling Unprettier on her.
Right.
I didn't have the Dragon Cutter on her, so there definitely needs to be a double foot stomp / diving double foot stomp. When 2K22 initially came out, the springboard diving double foot stomp was not available as a SIG. They have since fixed that, thank God. Because I wanted that as her SIG.
Right.
Specifically that springboard version. Because it summed up two different things that I think definitely need to be in her moveset in her SIG. The double foot stomp and springboard moves. She needs to have springboard moves and even diving outside the ring moves to some extent in her arsenal, in her moveset. Head scissors, hurricane ranas need to be in there. I mean, because when I think about the type of stuff she does, that's what comes to my mind. That she needs to have at least one or two of the, one head scissor, one hurricane rana, somewhere in that moveset. Because it's something that she would have been brought up on.
Right.
Speaking of things that she's been brought up on, there needs to be a DDT in there somewhere.
Right.
It doesn't have to be Jake's. But I mean, the Corvin, I have a thing of there are certain moves that I equate with the Corvin family,
Right.
not specifically with House Corvin, but the actual Corvin family.
Right.
And I mean, largely that's Gaz, Chandra, Chloe. And that move is the DDT. Or one of those moves in particular. The primary one that comes to mind is the DDT.
Right. Right.
And I mean that's pretty much it right there. I mean that's your 5. The foot stomp, the moves, the rolling unpretty, or the diving moonsault. Of course, your diving moonsault. Excuse me. The springboard moves, a DDT, head scissor, Hurricane Rana type move.
Right.
I mean, there's your 5.
So, let's talk about, and we kind of talked about this when we were looking at influences, but let's just kind of give one more fresh painted coat on
I mean,
the character's design and the look, and how it's evolved over time.
Well, like I said, there are a couple of attires that you and I have tossed back and forth. I've got a list of what I refer to as the principal attires for my House Corvin characters.
Right.
Not just the Corvin family, but what I refer to as the House Corvin characters that are involved with the Worldwide Wrestling Network. And with Chloe, there is the for lack of the Misfit doll attire that is the mashup of Sally from Nightmare and the girl from the horror house.
Right.
There is the theatrical Columbia from Rocky Horror Picture that is meant to be kind of over the top. I mean, well, I say kind of. No, definitely over the top, but kind of more glitzy over the top.
Right.
I use the gold jacket, even with her clown attire, just because I like that. I like the gold jacket.
Right.
And I think the only thing that we might do a couple of versions in the future of that gold jacket, like maybe with something on the back of one of them. I don't know. It's an idea, but definitely the Columbia attire and that's what I refer to it as.
Right.
And then I've started looking at some of the stuff that Poppy and the Grimes are doing, and I'm starting to look at a few other folks. And then there's the clown attire, which I guess I don't know if we can. Do we want to plug the young lady?
No. Let's keep it.
The clown. We'll just call her the clown girl.
Right.
Because she's no longer streaming on Twitch. That's why I'm asking.
Right.
So, but she, she gave us that one clown idea, and I don't know if we'll revisit that particular setup, but we may revisit the clown motif, somewhere down the road.
Right.
If we do, the one thing I don't want to do with her doing that kind of clown motif, I don't want to go too far into Juggalo territory.
Right.
I have nothing against Insane Clown Posse.
That's just not the look that you're going for. You're looking for more
that's just
classic,
not
classic
simply look,
clown
vibe.
Yeah.
It's not the vibe, not the as in addition to the look.
Right.
And I think we'll probably find a couple of other theatrical based things before it's all said and done. What attire that we've not even discussed? I want to do a Marvel Comics inspired attire for her. I just don't
Right.
know which character. And I say that because we have done Marvel Comics inspired attires for Gaz Corvin in the past.
Right.
We've done it for Chandra Corvin. We've done it for Vendetta. We've not done one for. We've talked about the one we were going to do for Orion Masters. We never did it.
Right.
And we never came up with which one we wanted to do for Chloe.
Right.
So that'll probably be something we do with 2K23 if we get, after we get the basics done. And I think that's pretty much, the gambit of it. She's the only one of my characters that I both like putting I don't mind putting face paint on. I won't say I like it, but I have a love-hate with the idea of putting face paint on her because, I'll do it for the clown outfit, but we have such a good face texture for her that I really hate putting face paint on her.
Right.
Unless we have to.
So, getting back to the whole purpose of the podcast in and of itself, okay? We talked about in our initial podcast that we view, and me especially, that wrestling is about casting. Booking is casting.
Yes.
And so, with that being said, what role do you feel Chloe Corvin best fills out? If you were casting her in a role on a show, where does she fill out?
You mean like on just a regular TV show? Or...
No. Like in wrestling, like what role does she play?
I mean, here's my thing on Chloe. She is she's an eccentric daredevil. She's technically proficient. Due to her size, because she's always going to be one of the smaller girls on the roster, she's going to be an underdog.
Right.
Okay. I've always thought of her being more the gatekeeper than the title holder.
Right.
And there's something to be said for that position in a promotion.
Right.
I think under the right circumstances, she could be, she could get a short title run, but it would be the transitional title
run.
Right. Put the title on Chloe if you need to build up. If you need to get somebody in there, you don't want to. Most promotions will not want to do the face versus face for the title, or heel versus heel for the title, and you can throw Chloe in there as that transitional title. Other than that, she's just there to tell a good story. And I think if I'm taking it from the character's perspective, she's less concerned with the amount of titles she's had, the amount of title reigns that she's had, than the amount of stories she's told.
Right.
And particularly good stories. She uses. I have a thing with her of having the excuse of playtime.
Right.
That this is playtime for her, and it's the best way I could come up with explaining this idea of she is supposed to get out there and perform. She just wants to get out there and get a response from the audience. It's, it's a thing that I think a lot of people don't really think about in the business. They look at, too many people look at, oh, this guy's buried because he lost a match.
Right.
Did you watch the match? That was a hell of a match. So what, he lost? I mean, the guy comes out looking like $1 million in a loss. That's still a good match. That's still a good performance for him. 2K makes that a little bit difficult at times with the way some of the AI stuff works.
Right, and getting into
some
that,
of the stat changes work.
Yeah, getting into that, let's talk about those attribute and personality settings on Chloe. How do we use those settings to bring that character to life? And most importantly, what attributes and personality abilities do you feel help tell your character story the most?
If they don't mess with the settings too much more, jeez. Bold definitely is going to be her primary setting.
Right.
From what I've seen, the bold personality setting increases the rate of them doing springboard moves, going to the top rope, doing big moves in a match. And that's where, she's not going to hesitate to springboard and try to hit her opponent, or do aerial moves. And, so much of her moveset is based around the fact that she does a lot of running, aerial, and, springboard moves. And a lot of her grapple moves, or even strike moves, are more based around her legs than her upper body.
Right.
Unless it's, the grapple stat. She's, she's not going to have power moves in her moveset, except for maybe like 1 or 2 at best. I think, she would be more about submission defense than offense, because she's not the submission, person that either of her cousins are.
No.
And the one other personality stat, I think loyal would be a thing for her. While she's not going to be a regular tag team performer, if you get Chloe Corvin in a tag match with you, she's not going to leave the match. She's going to be there. She's going to have your back. If you're a friend. If you stab her in the back, then you'd better be, across the state line before the night's over.
Right.
But I mean, she's not a, I want to have her stats and her personality stats and her actual stats, make it to where certain things feel like a big thing for her to do that may not be the flashy power move that someone a foot taller than her might do.
Right.
So I mean, it's due to the nature of the game, you have to put a lot of submission in there, submission defense, especially with 2K22 and certain. I think they patched it a little bit.
They did patch it a little bit.
It all together.
Right. But anyway,
but yeah.
So I just wanted to thank you for your time in bringing out and going in deep with the Chloe Corvin character and looking at the influences of the character. And so just bringing that out, letting the rest of the world know what this character has to offer, other things that are going on. So just while we are at it, we have a link tree that is active, ladies and gentlemen. That is at Project WWN. If you are looking on Willow, and you can
Now it's
see
Project WWWN.
yeah, Project
You
WWWN
said
at
to
yeah, at
Yes.
Project WWWN. And if you go there, you will see a couple of things. You will see the link to the podcast on Spotify. You'll see a Worldwide Wrestling Network call application for where you'll see a Building Legends guest form. You'll see a Dynasties in Progress guest form, and you'll also see a link to the Failed Hero Twitch stream. In all of this, we want to thank everybody for bringing out and listening and basically supporting us as we've gone along into a couple of different directions this year. Thank you for all the support. We are still going to try to do some more things beyond just our podcast. Hopefully, I'll be able to recover some of the characters that have gone missing thanks to the data wipe. But with that being said, I just want to take a minute and just let people know, hey, podcast is back in some form or fashion. We are going to be putting this on Spotify, so if you don't want to share the video, if you think that I am visually unappealing, then share the audio that we are going to be putting out on our Spotify account. With that being said, Gary, is there anything else that you have to add?
Yes. Because you left it off from the bottom of the questionnaire. Well, actually, Chloe is not in that promotion anymore, so never mind. But let's see. My gamer tag is ghamrick75. If you're looking for any of my characters up on Community Creations, they will be under the tag of House Corvin. I will be putting my characters back up in their final form sometime within the next 7 days from the time we're recording this. So, aside from that, I think I can only think of one thing left to say, Isaac.
What's that?
Stay safe.
And stay over. This has been Project WWWN. Thank you for listening. We hope that this episode has been informative and entertaining.
Get in contact with us. Please go to willow.link/@ProjectWWWN. That is WLO.link/@ProjectWWWN. If you are interested in being a guest on a Building Legends episode, click that Building Legends guest form. Answer the questions and submit, and we will be in contact with you to set up an interview.
If you like what we are doing, please follow us on Spotify and Twitter. And most importantly, tell your friends in the community and let them know that Project WWWN is worth a listen. As we end our show, let us remind everyone of the wisest words in the world given to us by Don Callis, also known as Lord Cyrus of Moldova. Stay safe.
And stay over.